We're here today with David Miliband, the former Foreign Secretary for the UK and also MP for South Shields. Mr Miliband, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thanks, Will. Good to be here.
You know Hillary Clinton very well. She's a close friend of yours. Would you like her perhaps to go for the presidency next time?
Of course I would. I mean, but you know, it's a bit early to be saying that. I think she's been a great Secretary of State, and without question, she is the best qualified candidate for 2016. There's no question about it. However, I'm sure she's the first person to say we haven't even inaugurated the re-elected president for 2012, 2013 to 2016. So for goodness sake, let's not get ahead of ourselves. The re-elected President Obama comes in 20th of January 2013. But if you're saying to me, if Hillary asks you in 2 years' time, should I go for it? Of course I'd want her to go for it because she's the best qualified candidate and she could do something really significant. I mean, if you think about it, President Obama came in after 8 years of President Bush. He's inevitably a transitional president. He's having to put wars behind him in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's trying to rebuild relationships around the world. He's trying to deal with the fiscal crisis. I mean, a Hillary Clinton presidency could substantiate or cement a democratic period of government of very significant social, economic, international kind. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This is very early days.
And moving to the Israel-Palestine conflict, do you see that getting better or worse in the next 6 to 12 months?
I think there's very little signs of optimism there. I mean, there's a lot of in my view, self-defeating measures by the Israelis, the settlement building, the siege on Gaza, which just leads to Hamas taking up, charging people for using the tunnels into Gaza, so it's a source of revenue for them. And obviously the Palestinians are very divided between the West Bank and Gaza, politically divided. So I think I've said before that the biggest thing that President Obama could do would be to say to President Clinton, former President Clinton, look, I want you to be my special envoy to the Middle East. You got closest in 2001. You're the man who's going to have to be my envoy.
What is your view on Iran? Will they get the bomb in 2013 or not?
Well, I don't think anyone says they'll get the bomb in 2013, and none of the timelines suggest that. I think one of the successes of the Obama administration over the last year has been to dial down the rhetoric and to prevent a very dangerous situation getting out of control. I mean, 2013 can't be the year when it gets the bomb, and it mustn't be the year when they get bombed, because both are very, very destructive for the Middle East. And I think that one of the big tasks for a new Secretary of State in the US is to engage in this in a very serious way. I mean, the Americans are key to it. They can't do it on their own. Iran will never agree to being humiliated by America, so it probably needs to be part of a wider grouping. But I think we're going to need some real imagination, probably not to solve it in the next 6 months, but to stop it being resolved in a very, very dangerous way. The Iranians need to exercise responsibility, but so does the outside world.
Okay, and obviously, as former Foreign Secretary, you dealt very closely with Middle Eastern issues. What's your feeling, what's going to happen in Syria next?
I think that the balance is shifting in Syria, but not fast enough to get Assad out. My fear is that there's a decent chance that this time next year we'll still be talking about Assad hanging on to power. I mean, clearly 30–40% of the country is now out of his control. And I think the burden of proof has changed. Before, the people who were cautious about external intervention seemed to have the upper hand. I mean, I was pretty cautious myself. You don't want to throw dangerous explosives onto something that's already afire. But I think the burden of proof has changed in the following way. The people who were cautious about intervention were saying, we can't afford, in the explosive mix of Syria, the heart of the Middle East, another conflict. We've got the conflict now. The people who said we can't afford chaos, we've got chaos. The people who said we can't afford mass bloodshed, we've got it. And most importantly, actually, it's probably not the humanitarian point, but the geopolitical point. This is now not just a struggle for democracy. It's not just a struggle for individual rights. It's a struggle between different power centers in the Middle East. And it's pretty binary. Either it's a win for the Assad-Iran axis, or it's a win for a wide range of people across the Middle East, some of them Democrats, some of them secularists, some of them actually pretty Salafist, who are trying to get him out. But it's a pretty black and white situation. I think the burden of proof has now shifted on humanitarian, diplomatic, geopolitical grounds. Assad can only be part of the problem now. And so I think that there's a much stronger case now for going beyond just arming the rebels, which I think Syria is not short of Kalashnikovs, I'm afraid. What you need is to be looking at much more significant military plans. I don't have access to those plans, that military planning anymore, but from Turkey, a member of NATO, right through the West, I think it's worth looking at how you stop a government bombing its own people, which is what's happening at the moment.
Are you suggesting safe havens or something like that?
We should certainly be looking at a whole range of things. Safe havens applies to the north of Syria. That would be the argument there. Turkey has proposed that in the past. But if you want to do that, you've got to take out a whole set of air defense systems. So it's very big choices now. But I think that 2013, we've paid the price for Syria being in a kind of limbo as far as the outside world is concerned. America, Russia clashing in the Security Council, nothing getting done. And so they've been fighting it out within Syria with support from different backers in the region.
So you think the UK, do you think there should be military intervention, or do you think there should be a targeted bombing campaign, take the defences out?
Well, as I say, I don't have access to the military plans now, but what we need is to bring it to a close as soon as possible, because the longer it goes on, obviously the greater the bloodshed. The greater the bloodshed, the harder it is to stop sectarian strife, real civil war without a government afterwards. And so I think that's why I say the burden of proof has shifted in a quite significant way. I think the upper hand is with those who are saying that Assad has got to be removed. The Russians are beginning to move in that direction. I think it's quite interesting over the last 3 or 4 days. And those who do have access to the military plans, I think, need to be looking at a much more substantial stepping up of the engagement.
Okay, thank you very much. And one of the big issues is going to be Europe in the next year. What's your view on it? Should there be a referendum?
I think that a strong Europe is good for Britain, and you can't have a strong Europe unless Britain's playing a leading role in Europe. I'm very concerned about some of the rhetoric around Britain's European membership. It costs about £60 per person per year, £1 a week to be a member of the European Union, the world's largest, richest single market, a powerful player on international trade and environment issues. For people to talk in the way they do, conservative leaders, Mayor of London, to talk in the way that they do about the European Union as this kind of phantom that's threatening Britain, I think is really, really dangerous. And the latest argument, which is that Britain should opt into a version of the European Union that doesn't exist, is, in my view, very, very irresponsible. The Mayor of London said that he wants to join a club that is only a single market and has nothing to do with social policy, environmental policy, or foreign policy. That club doesn't exist. And you can't opt into a club that doesn't exist. You can't sign up for a school where there's no homework. You've got to join the school or the club that does exist. And what we have is a very big choice for Britain. And so I think it's time in 2013 to bring some reality to this debate and take on the myths.
Should there be a referendum at some stage, do you think?
Well, I think that certainly there shouldn't be a referendum now. If I came here today and said 6-9 months after voting in the House of Commons against having a referendum, that suddenly there should be a referendum, you could very legitimately say to me, well, where's the consistency in that? Europe is, the big issue for Europe at the moment is sorting out the euro. That's a matter for the Eurozone countries. The last thing we need now is to have a great debate about whether Britain should pull out. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all.